Hello! Am I live? Hello, am I live? Yes, I do appear to be live now. Hi, everyone. Sorry for the slight delay. So, I think I should first start off with a bit of an explanation for why I'm doing this in the first place, which is basically I've not been very well for the last week or so. Combination of allergies and all that, and just generally not feeling all that great. So, I need to get something out, and this seems like a good way of doing that, just very quickly getting something out. But also, I promised a while back that I was going to do a live Q&A, and I've never got round to it just yet, so I think that's something that I'm going to have to attend to very quickly. Just realised I haven't put the focus lock. There we go. Got the touch tracking on. It's fine. It's going to be completely in focus. I can just forget about that now for the rest of the night. Okay. So, yeah, sorry to keep you all waiting. The explanation for that was basically it's been a while since I've done a live stream. The last time I did a live stream, the audio was out of sync because the camera was slightly ahead of the audio. But now Sony's released the whole Imaging Edge app for my camera, so I can just plug it into the computer. The USB microphone and the camera are on about the same speed as each other, so it should be fine. It should be fine. How is the setup? Is it audible? Can you understand me? I'm not too quiet, am I? I did spend a couple of moments just trying to faff around with that. In fact, I actually made this a lot more complicated for myself because I tried to connect my my camera's microphone on top into the computer via a bunch of workarounds, and you know what? Keep it simple. Just use a USB microphone. No popcorn this time. I've learned my lesson for the last time I did that. Not a lot of people watched it. Okay, so the audio's good. I know that there's a very long delay here, so if I ever ask a question to the audience, it's going to take at least 15 seconds. Okay, so I'm going to start off with the questions that were posed from my Patreon audience, because I asked them about it a while back. Okay, so I'm going to start off with those in lieu of questions. So if you want to ask me a question, ask in the super chat, and I will try to answer it as promptly as possible if I'm not answering another question first. So, okay, we start with Vincent Chiang. What is your opinion on the action genre of movies? Has it grown and evolved? What about influences from other countries? Oh, that's not going to be a very short question, is it? That's a good one to start off with. As far as action movies go, I love action movies. I think it's my favourite genre. It's definitely the one that I grew up with for the longest time. And as such, I definitely feel like I've seen a lot of what action movies can do. I know what tropes they can fall into and things like that. And so that does mean that I tend to be quite a harsh critic on action movies. I think that generally with action movies, even if you've maybe not got the most original story in the world, what really works is the action side of it. If the action side really works, then you can forgive a lot of it, because that's the whole point of the genre. And so I do think the genre has evolved. I think it's more this kind of superhero genre these days, rather than pure action heroes. A lot of the pure action side of it, the sort of classic stuff you would see in Sly and Arnie movies, that side of it is kind of falling into direct-to-video, and I think a lot of that is because action as a genre, a lot of the people that help popularise it are still the guys essentially ruling over that genre, and so it's kind of got a bit geriatric, or geriaction, as you might want to call it. I think it's a genre that does need some new blood in it, although we have had a little bit. We've got Charlize Theron. She's definitely holding her end up with Atomic Blonde and The Old Guard. Scott Adkins, continually underrated in the genre. Definitely a workhorse. Not the most consistent of filmographies, but when he's good, Adkins is really, really good. So yeah, that's. I think that what really has helped the action genre in recent years is the effect of things like The Raid and Gareth Evans' input on the genre. I think that has cultivated a much more immediate, much more stunt-heavy take on the genre, and also pushes forward people who can actually do the martial arts skills and do the fighting. And I think the audiences are a lot more appreciative of that. They've moved away from the sort of here's a A-list star and then quickly chop it up to make it look like they can actually fight. Instead, they now actually want, their action stars to do things. They want them to actually fight and battle with each other. I've just realised I'm wearing my earphones. I'm not listening to any audio. Why am I even doing that? Okay. Headphones off. Right, okay. But I think that has had a really profound effect on the genre in the same way that the sort of martial arts boom of the 80s and early 90s, I think, aided the genre to a certain extent in the late 90s. But I think that the improvement with the sort of the raid influence and things like that has been a lot more sustained and honestly a lot more beneficial for the genre. So yeah, that's my long-winded take on the action genre. What a way to start off. We've got a couple of questions in the super chat already. Thank you, Harry Baker. Take as much time as you need. You make great work. Thank you. Unfortunately, the YouTube algorithm does not allow people to take that much time off. Dana Himrick, what's the oldest movie you're a fan of? Ooh. I think It's a Wonderful Life is probably up there. That's 1945, isn't it? So that's definitely quite up there. I admittedly, I haven't seen this in probably about a decade now, but I really enjoyed Sullivan's Travels when I saw that as part of my film studies class when I was at university. I remember I was the only person at that screening. I wandered in torrential rain that scared everyone off to the other building where most of the film studies classes were, and I had to essentially start it up myself because I was the only one there, even though this was meant to be a scheduled screening. Good thing I enjoyed the movie, but I got drenched that day. But I enjoyed it. Sullivan's Travels is, in case you've not heard of it, is one of the notable inspirations for the Coen brothers' Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And in it, it's about a screenwriter who wants to make a sort of prestige picture about homelessness, and to do that, he decides that the best way of doing research is to integrate himself among the homeless people, and it's sort of a satire on that sort of thing. Yeah, for a 1940s movie, that's quite astute satire. Still quite relevant in a lot of ways. But of course, a lot of the publicity materials promoted Veronica Lake being in it because Veronica Lake, she's on the take. That was the tagline. But yeah, those are probably some of the oldest movies that I'm a big fan of. FN Lauter, have we ever made you lose your temper? Sorry, by the way. I wouldn't say I lose my temper that often. I don't lose my rag that often. Have I been frustrated occasionally? Not directly at people, no. I felt frustrated at certain other things. I can feel a bit frustrated if maybe a video didn't quite work out in the way that I wanted to, or it's not quite as successful as I maybe anticipated. That can be a little bit frustrating as a creator, but directly at people, no, not really. I noticed you seem like a good bunch, You seem like good eggs, so I haven't really been angry at you. I don't see any more super chat questions at the minute, so I'm just gonna keep on going with the next question from Oliver Harper. You know what I should have done in that first question about action genre films? I should have plugged Oliver Harper's movie In Search of the Last Action Heroes, because he talks about the genre extensively in that documentary, and it's a good documentary. Yeah, you should watch it. It's available on all good streaming platforms. So Oliver Harper asks, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Do you still want to continue with YouTube, or perhaps branch out into other forms of film criticism? I don't think that's an easy question to answer. I hate being asked, what do you want to do in the future? Because honestly, the answer is, I don't really know. I tend to take things as they come a lot of the time, really. Honestly, because whenever I have made any kind of long-term plans, they normally blow up in my face quite terribly, so I tend to avoid making real substantial long-term plans, if I'm totally honest. I always feel like I'm a little bit cursed like that. If I actually look forward to something, chances are something will completely scupper it. So I tend to just go day by day and just take things as they come. And so I guess I wouldn't mind maybe expanding out the channel or getting the chance to do more guest opportunities. I think that that's something that you don't see a lot of YouTubers do these days. They don't really seem to collaborate with each other in the same way anymore. And I can sort of understand it from a lot of the people from that certain websites, because I think that collaborations, at least in their mind, was very much connected with that period of time. And so I think that any time that sort of creators that were on that website collaborate with each other, I think it makes them reminiscent of perhaps times they're not particularly fond of. So I think that's the reason why there's been a lot less collaboration, certainly from the people that were involved in that particular of the internet, as it were. I also think that because YouTube seems to have so many scandals, everyone's a bit on sort of tenterhooks, trying to make sure that the people that they're collaborating with, aren't terrible people. Got to be mindful who you associate with. So I think that that's another factor there. I do think that where I would like to try and maybe branch out into other areas as well. I guess I'm always trying to find some kind of legitimacy, that that's I'm not sort of just shouting into the wind, as it were, that I do actually have a little bit of worth, or maybe I'm someone worth listening to. I don't know if that is actually the case, but I wouldn't mind that. I would also like to try and just do different things. Just generally, I would love to do a bit more of the acting thing. I know that's probably never really going to be a thing, but I would love to do it because I find it fun, and certainly it brings me out of my shell a little bit, and it's a challenge, So I think that is I think that that's very much what I would say that I would kind of like to do in the next 5 years, but I wouldn't say I have any kind of specific time frame. I'm not one of those people that has to set myself a goal of I have to be here by X and then do that, and I think that's not a great mindset to have, to be honest. I think that can be somewhat self-defeating if you don't achieve those things, and also I don't want to feel like I'm living life by a checklist. Maybe that's just me personally. Okay, so long-winded answers, more questions. Sam Montgomery, have you seen The Mandalorian? If so, thoughts? Personally, quite enjoying it, and this is coming from someone who's been indifferent to two Star Wars movies after the original trilogy. Indifferent to Star Wars after the original trilogy. No, I haven't seen The Mandalorian. I don't have Disney Plus, so I have not seen any of The Mandalorian. I know that it's very well received, especially within the Star Wars community. I know that my relationship with Star Wars, I didn't really like the new sequel trilogy at all. I know that's a very common complaint, but I feel like that whole trilogy was an absolute mess. I think it started out relatively strongly, and then with each successive movie, they were less and less clear what exactly they were trying to do with it, and Rise of Skywalker is just a disaster. The prequel trilogy I'd probably have a little bit of fondness for because I grew up with it. That's sort of my generation of Star Wars. But I know that they're probably not great movies, and I've not seen them in quite a long time. I know that H. Bomber Guy actually has a bit of fondness for them and keeps threatening to do a video about how they're actually brilliant, but he hasn't followed through on that threat yet. But that's completely understandable because he's probably a couple of years younger than me, so he grew up with them like I did, so that kind of tracks. But as far as The Mandalorian goes, not seen it, don't have an opinion on it. It's fine. The Purple Lord Leo and Anazi. Any contrarian views on huge, well-known movies? Any contrarian views on well-known movies? Huge fan of the work. Thank you, Purple Lord. I would say, contrarian. I've never been a big fan of Scent of a Woman. Remember, I don't know if people are still going around going, I love Central Woman, because, you know, that movie is almost 30 years old, but when I watched it and watching Al Pacino do the hoo-ha thing, I just felt it was very baggy, overlong, and overacted. I don't know if Al Pacino deserved to hoo-ha his way to a Best Picture, Best Actor Oscar. I really shouldn't do that. My messes up my throat bad. Trying to think of any recent films where I was a bit contrarian. I wasn't a huge fan of Birdman. I thought that Birdman was a bit... I guess... Again, it's been a while since I sat down and watched Birdman, but I didn't like the ending of it, which I thought maybe was a bit too celebratory of suicide. I thought that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know, but there's something about Birdman that I found not really for me. I feel like Another Round, the Mads Mikkelsen movie that's just come out, which I keep meaning to do a video on, I feel like I'm a bit more lukewarm on that movie than a lot of people are, and I think that's because of my opinions on drinking in general. I don't think that movie is particularly great. It almost seems like an advertisement for alcoholism at times. So I think that I do have my contrarian opinions, but I try to measure them by the fact that they are my opinions, and I know that they are not universal ones. I do not claim to be an authority on anything. I just purely am representing myself, and that's pretty much it. Kirky Novak doesn't actually have a question, but just gave me a thumbs up. Well, thanks for that. Thank you. No more Super Chat questions just yet, so we'll move back to the Patreon questions. Edgil asks, I am pretty sure everyone wants to know if you're planning to bring back Bad Movie Beatdown at some point, but I would like to know which TV, cartoon and anime shows that you really like and are watching on any huge projects at the moment. And are you working on any huge projects at the moment? And of all the movies you have seen, which do you think have the most ugly and despicable messages that they want their audiences to agree on? That's a lot of questions. That is a lot of questions. Should I answer the Bad Movie Beatdown one? I guess the answer is I do want to do things with it. I always keep saying I'm going to do something with it, and then my projector schedule gets on top of me, and I don't get around to doing it. There's loads of stuff that I've wanted to do, but never got round to. My schedule's been a bit all over the place, and then there have been stuff that I've wanted to do for literally years that I've not got round to, and then that ends up weighing on me a bit because I always feel like I'm laying people down, that I'm not doing that sort of thing constantly, and obviously I'm still putting back old episodes because that's a continual process, and it's a bit of a tricky thing to do, and so that slows down things as well. I am halfway through a script for a new one. I just need to find the time to finish it and then just go through it. I am going to do an end of the year special as well. There are some Patreon requests that I've literally been meaning to do for years, and I want to do them. I just want to get it out. Just get rid of them, because I feel like they're a burden on my back, and they make me. I feel guilty about the fact that I keep deferring them. I don't mean to do that, but it just ends up being something like, oh, this has to be out then. I have to put this out a bit later, and then that keeps happening over and over again, and I just feel guilty about it, and then it makes me feel worse, and so need to get rid of those at some point and just do it. Maybe next year, maybe. Okay. As far as anime and TV shows, don't really watch anime. Not really my thing for the most part. Certain exceptions. I've watched Your Name, which I really, really enjoyed. Akira, obviously. Haven't even really watched the Studio Ghibli movies. Slightly ashamed to admit, but Japanese anime, not really my area, so I tend to kind of stay away from it. Cartoons in general, I don't really watch anything presently. I used to watch Simpsons a lot back in the day, so I'm the sort of person that can quote a lot of Simpsons and tell you which episode things are from, because I grew up with that fairly religiously. But aside from that, don't really watch a lot of cartoons either. I guess I have been watching SpongeBob SquarePants lately, but that's because I've been researching for the fact that I'm reviewing the new one that I watched the other day. So I don't know if that really counts. I'm not going to claim myself as a SpongeBob fan because I'm definitely not. Um, uh, what else was part of that question? Am I working on any huge projects at the moment? Yes. I mean, Edgel probably knows this, but I've got a retrospective on the Lego movie that I keep meaning to do. In fact, it's been in the works for so long that it was actually before Lego Movie 2 started, and then that's gonna be in the video now. So that's something that's on the to-do list. I think I mentioned on Twitter that I wanted to do a video talking about planes, trains, and automobiles in time for Thanksgiving, and I couldn't make the time to do that, so that's down the line. There are other video ideas that are kind of, they're in the notebook. They're sort of, I want to do them at some point, and those I haven't really made a start on, but I know what I want to do. So there's a couple of more kind of essay sort of things. That was going to be the sort of plan this year, was to try and lean a bit more into the essay kind of style on occasion, try and shake things up a little bit. Because I do worry that maybe I'm getting a little bit boring or repetitious and just trying to do new things. So I did a couple of them, like I did the one about movie trailers where I recut Liar Liar into uncut gems, and I did the one on Mulan, which is very spontaneous. That one was very much kind of like a spur-of-the-moment decision, like, okay, I feel like I've got enough to say here, I'm doing it, and I just turned it around very, very quickly. I did actually start on another essay that I never actually completed because I didn't get to see one of the movies that I wanted to talk about, because Capone, the Tom Hardy movie, still hadn't been released in the UK, which is, oh well. But yeah, I started writing that one, but I don't know if that essay's moment has quite passed. And the most ugly and despicable messages that they want their audiences to agree on, typically that tends to be found in comedies, I've found. I've talked about this in The Hangover Part 2, which I thought was blatantly transphobic and a really horrible and nasty scene. Good Luck Chuck as well, which has a really sexist, misogynist view of women. I think that there's a lot of comedies from that period that really don't stand up to scrutiny if you look at them, and I think that there is definitely a kind of bro-y culture that for the most part has kind of dissipated from sort of comedies at that point. I do think that that's generally kind of gone away in a lot of modern comedies, or at least they're more actively aware of them. I wouldn't say that there's a lot of recent movies that have particularly harmful messages in quite the same way. There's obviously more people kind of paying attention to that sort of thing. Me Before You was also one that I singled out. I remember reviewing that a while ago, and I saw that at an early screening. I think I saw it like 2 weeks before it came out, and I spent 2 weeks debating how I talked about that movie, because obviously it requires talking about the ending, which seems to imply that it's better off dead than being disabled, which is a horrible thing to say. You know, that's a horrible message to send out, but that's what that movie said with the ending, and even the character's name, Will, literally, in death, he grants her something in his will, so he's literally reduced to a plot device, which is, God. I think I end up just making the decision like, okay, I'm just going to have to spoil the ending, because that's the only way of talking about this properly. And sometimes you do have to do that. That's just the way that it is. Sorry, I know there's been lots of super chats that I keep missing because I've had to answer this multi-part question. Okay, so Darth Briboy, do you think that post-MCU Scarlett Johansson has the potential to be one of the big action stars of the next decade? Also, have you ever encountered Blu-ray or DVD Blu-ray or DVD disc rot in your collection? To date, I don't think I have. Not just yet. Knock on wood. I have not encountered any disc rot. As for Scarlett Johansson, I would already argue that she is one of the major action stars at the moment, considering that she's been playing Black Widow for the best part of a decade. I think that there's a lot less people that are strictly action stars, and so a lot of sort of the big names these days are kind of people that can do a little bit of everything. You know, that they can do the drama and they can do comedy and they can do the action stuff. And that's how the superhero genre has really kind of shaped Hollywood in general, is that a lot of superhero movies are multi-genre. So they function as action movies and they function as comedies. They're kind of Swiss Army knives in that way, and as such, I think the talent pool in Hollywood, you're less focused on a specific genre, but I would definitely argue that I think in general perception, Scarlett Johansson is probably considered to be an action star. Wolfman98, I'm in college right now, and I was wondering, what was your experience with college? Hoo-hoo! Okay, college or uni, I to some extent my experience was quite good, because it was again something that brought me a bit out of my shell. I was very shy when I was younger. I was bullied quite a lot, so I retreated into myself, especially during secondary school, and it was only really once it got into kind of sixth form, going into university, did I start to kind of move out of my shell. And this was around the time where I started actually making videos as well, so I think that was kind of a little bit therapeutic for me as well, having that kind of outlet there. But what was nice about university was getting to meet all these new people, but had very kind of similar mindsets to me to a certain extent, and sort of gravitating towards those groups. And I think that helps. I felt I did feel very alone when I was in secondary school a lot of the time. I felt like I was an outsider, and I still feel like that a lot of the time, honestly. But it was nice to have people that I could connect with. That being said, though, that first year at uni in the digs, I've got horror stories. There are stories that I literally cannot tell on YouTube streams because they are awful. My first year at uni, I had the quiet corridor, but it was not really the quiet corridor, because for some reason there are a bunch of sporty jocks in the same corridor, and they would regularly get pissed up. So there was nights where you just had to lock the door because they would rush around and try to bash through people's doors and things like that. That was a fun time. Yeah, there are literal horror stories. No, I can't mention that story. No, I absolutely cannot mention that story. I'll just give you a very succinct version of it. It involves poop. A lot of poop. I'll just leave it at that. Alien Boy 13, in your review of The Purge, you said that you don't like films that satirize violence in American media. Could you talk more about that? It's been a while since I did that review. That was 2013. I think my opinion on that has kind of evolved somewhat since then, because when I made that statement, my mindset is thinking of things like The Condemned, where I would argue that, and I think the first Purge is maybe guilty of this to a certain extent. I think that the subsequent Purge movies have done a better job of managing the horror and the satire than the first movie, which was obviously like a compromise of, here's a super cheap one to establish the premise, and then we'll do the movie that we really want to do the second time. And so the first Purge, I think, doesn't really hold up very... The first Purge movie, as opposed to the first Purge, the prequel movie, the original Purge movie with Ethan Hawke doesn't hold up. It has a lot of plot holes. Those have subsequently been filled in later movies, but I think that there's still... I think that my mindset with that statement is that there's a lot of movies that try to satirize things like media violence and things like that, but are kind of blatantly hypocritical, where it feels like they're chastising their audience for enjoying genre fare, or they're kind of being sort of critical on one hand, but then really kind of indulging in the violence. And I don't kind of like that. I mean, sometimes that works for a specific artistic point, like it's making the audience feel disgusted, it's making them, hold a mirror up to themselves. That's the point of what's going on there. However, I do think that perhaps something like The Condemned is a very bad example of it, because that's a WWE film, and yet it explicitly mocks WWE's own pay-per-view strategy, and that uses the same kind of moral guardian media violence arguments that have been used by fairly conservative media, and seems to argue that that is the opinion that it's pushing forward. So that really doesn't make sense in that case. So I think that that's my general opinion when I made that statement, is that movies that try... And Gamer was the other one as well, which again was sort of satirizing people who enjoy video games and the excessive violence within, which is a topic that could be explored, but not in that movie, which seems to revel in just how brutal and extreme it is, and also doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So that was my kind of mindset there. Hey, it's James Bowen, hi! James Bowen of the Street Cat Named Bob fame, and of course A Christmas Gift from Bob, which is available on VOD in the UK, so go out and rent that. Did you enjoy your visit to our set, and is that similar to other sets you'd been on? Also, where is the Bloodsuckers Bad Movie Beatdown? Well, I guess the cat's out of the bag there on sort of the Bloodsuckers review. So James Bowen actually is one of the Patreon requests that I had fielded, and that is going to be something that I will do fairly shortly. That is the one that I'm about halfway through on. It's a lot of research because it's generally talking from a different era of film than I normally talk about. So Bloodsuckers is a movie from 1970 that was filmed in the late 60s, kind of sat on the shelf a little bit. It's an incomplete movie. And so the connection there is that James Bowen is related to the director of that movie, and so I wanted to choose an interesting target, and I think that there is some interesting things about that movie. I think that it may actually be not quite the kind of traditional Bad Movie Beatdown episode you would expect. But yeah, I think that that's going to be interesting. I promise I will get round to it. I did enjoy going to the set, James. Thank you. Thank you for that opportunity. You know what? It was very different to the other movies that I've been on, because obviously that was a proper, legit movie. And for the most part, I haven't really been on those kind of sets. A lot of it is kind of the very kind of micro-budget movies of people with DV camcorders and things like that. So the only other times I've been on a real set like that is the Ashens movies, where I would come in for a day to shoot cameos, or what I did in Polybius Heist, which was extra work. And so in that case, it was quite different. It was nice to sort of do the traditional set visit, because that's something that I hadn't really done before. So that was a brand new opportunity, and I have to admit, like any brand new opportunity, I spent most of that day absolutely terrified, to be honest. I genuinely did, because there's always that voice in the back of my head going, you're going to screw this up, you're going to screw this up, you're going to screw this up, and I have to make a conscious effort to try and not listen to that voice. But generally, it seems like I did a fairly good job with that. I don't think I posed any interview questions that offended people, so that's always a good thing. That's always a good barometer. Don't offend people in interviews. Would I want to do something like that again? Maybe. I always feel there was a part of me that kind of goes, well, you don't really belong here. But again, that's my kind of self-defeating brain kicking in, going, because that's sort of how my brain works, is that there's always this kind of me wrestling with how much I deserve. So I guess I would like to do more set opportunities in the future, maybe. When I was doing the BFI London Film Festival, I was actually offered interviews with the filmmakers, but because I was reviewing a lot of their films, I figured that probably wasn't right. I feel like that would have been a bit of a... I don't know if it would have been a conflict of interest, but I just feel like I would have been a bit backstabby if I was a bit chummy in an interview and then suddenly said, well, the film is kind of like this, and, So I'm not sure if I'm going to make interviews a proper thing. There's also the fact that, again, my mind is going, well, do I really deserve to be doing these interviews? I think that's just my mind playing up, really. But thank you again, James. That really was an immense opportunity, Thank you so much, and I really do want to get that video out for you. I really do. I will try and do that. Okay, got lots and lots of questions I keep meaning to. Okay, Kirk Novak. Any films you reviewed that you'll change your mind on? Typically, I'm not too bad at that. Typically, if I have an opinion on something, it's usually the opinion that I stick with. I I think the only example that springs to mind is the Jason Statham remake of The Mechanic, which I put as one of the worst films of 2011 and said that it bored me to sleep. And then I watched it again a few years later and I just wondered what caused that reaction. I don't know if it was really kind of worth mentioning as being one of the worst films I saw that year. Maybe I was just seeing that movie on a really grumpy day or something. Generally speaking, though, if I've seen something, I have gone and revisited certain films, and occasionally films that I didn't like the first time, to see if maybe my opinion has changed on it. And for 95%, maybe even, let's say 98, 99% of the time, my opinion has not really changed substantially in any real significant way. It would normally have to take a fairly significant shift in perception to mean that what I felt about the movie had changed in a real dramatic way. And often I kind of stand by what I said in those videos, which are, especially for projector videos where I'm sort of speaking off the cuff. Missy Diabolical, festive greetings to you and all. What are your top 3 Christmas films? Ooh. Top 3 Christmas films. Die Hard's definitely up there. I really enjoy Die Hard. Great action movie. Literally the archetypal example of how you write an action movie. So well written. It's almost like a disaster movie, like this big ensemble cast. And the action, it's not ridiculous. It grounds the movie. There's lots of genuine emotions there. And weirdly does make you feel a bit festive. And Alan Rickman, brilliant in that movie. He won't be joining us for the rest of his life. Great stuff. What else is there? Scrooged. I love Scrooged because I really enjoy Bill Murray. And that movie has... it has kind of dated in certain respects. I mean, it's a movie that's got the solid gold dancers in it, but it's really, really funny, and I do enjoy Bill Murray in it. Even if Bill Murray himself does not like that movie, apparently Bill Murray, him and Richard Donner, who directed it, were constantly fighting during production, and the tone of it was shifting. You can tell that in the finished product. It's a really kind of uneven movie in terms of its tone, but I think that kind of works for it. It's that sort of sweetness and darkness simultaneously, but apparently Bill Murray recalls a lot of that as Richard Donner just asking him to say it louder, like louder, louder, louder. I think he must have been deaf or something. So I don't think Bill Murray has a very high opinion of Scrooge, but I like it. I like it quite a bit. Number 3. Number 3, I guess It's a Wonderful Life. It's a Wonderful Life is a great movie. Jimmy Stewart, it's saccharine, it's very sort of sentimental, but you know what? It's a lovely, sincere movie. There's a reason why people have embraced it in the way they have, and I think that it still stands up to this day. It's a testament to the quality of It's a Wonderful Life that it's 70 years old now, and people still watch it. People still love it. So, I think that's a good number 3. I've watched Die Hard and It's a Wonderful Life in theatrical re-releases, and if you ever get the chance to do that, definitely see them on the big screen. They definitely have a different life. I would say that Gremlins is somewhere on my top list. I really enjoy Gremlins. Again, I think, have I seen that on the big screen? Actually, I don't think I have seen Gremlins on the big screen, which is, maybe I ought to rectify that at some point. Either way, I enjoy all 4 of those movies. I know you asked for 3, but I give 4 because, well, you're paying for it, so I should go that extra mile. Elsie, I think that's Elsie. Just thank you, Elsie. No question there. Just donating. That's lovely. Thank you. Matt Williams, aka Welshie. Okay. What's it like working with the beautiful and talented Welshie? I'm paying for this question, so be nice. Man. Welshie. No, seriously, he's a pleasure. He's a... Welshie's very much like a kind of big brother. He teases, but he generally tries to look out for me. We should meet up again. I want to do something with you, Welshie. Just do another Texas Chainsaw video or something, even though it'll probably be demonetized because now I have to self-certify my own videos, so I have to... I'll either have to use very strategic editing or just be honest and say that I can't monetize that video. But either way, I look forward to seeing you again in future, like a lot of my friends who, honestly, I don't... It might be years when I see my friends, but it's always nice to see them. I don't think I've actually seen you, Welshie, in person since 2018, maybe even 20... 20... Goodness knows. Years ago. That's the answer to that question. The last time I saw Welshie, years ago. But he's doing well. Every so often someone will ask me, how's Welshie doing? And the answer is, he's doing fine. He's doing great. He's probably doing better than me. Simone Salvatore, most disappointing film in recent memory. The Rise of Skywalker. Oof. That's the kind of movie where I asked, do I actually want to watch a Star Wars film again at the end of that? I was so disappointed in that. I mean, I was braced for it not being very good, because as soon as Palpatine was revealed in the teaser trailer, I kind of felt a disturbance in the Force there, but I was not prepared for how bad that movie was. Yeah, I think that's my biggest disappointment in recent memory. Do you know that your MI2 review is 10 years old? Yes, I do. I am very acutely aware that by internet standards I am an old man. There are times where I worry that I am a complete irrelevance, and maybe that's correct. But yes, it is 10 years old now. A lot of those reviews are. But unfortunately the internet still thinks that I am 19 and 20 and not 30 now. Terence Jameson, big fan of your Bad Movie Beatdown series. Is there a movie that you would never review on Bad Movie Beatdown? If so, why not? There are a lot of movies that I wouldn't review on Bad Movie Beatdown. Why? Because I don't think they're bad enough. There's a very kind of specific process with selecting movies for it, in that I have to feel like it impassions me to actually say something about the movie. There's a lot of bad films that are just boring, just sort of not especially memorable or noteworthy, and so those kind of get discarded. And so I have to pick movies that I feel have something worth talking about in them, and sort of spur me to do that. And normally I can tell when that's happening when I'm watching something. I can tell when a movie is deeply flawed, as it were. But there's a lot of movies I just wouldn't review, because when I'm doing a Bad Movie Beatdown video, I'm not really playing a character. It's it's me, but it's just a slightly exaggerated version of me for sort of comic effect. But what I'm saying in those reviews, I really do mean. I'm not playing a character. I'm not that sort of person. I don't want to be that person that's obligated to just hate everything I see, because then that feels completely disingenuous. You can't trust what I'm saying. I want to... Even if I'm trying to be funny, I want to be funny and informative and actually critical. So there's a lot of movies I wouldn't review because I just don't feel that way about them. So, that is the thing. If I reviewed it as a video, that's what I actually mean. Christopher Aries, who's a filmmaker whose movies you wished you liked more than you do? Ooh. I would always say that I kind of want to like a lot more Will Smith movies than I actually do, because Will Smith's very charismatic. He's a very funny guy, but I find a lot of his movies very kind of middling. I guess that's an answer to that question. As far as directors go, I don't know if there's any directors that are consistently like that, where I watch them and go, I wish I enjoyed them more than I actually do. Hmm. No, nothing coming to the top of my head right now. Maybe that will come back later, but generally, I tend to be quite open-minded with directors, and I, you know what? No, no, no. There's not really any directors where I go, I wish I enjoyed their work a bit more. I actually do. Broadly speaking, I think there are individual movies where I go, I wish I enjoyed that movie a bit more. Kirk Novak, you missed some super chats above mine. Okay, thank you for that. I will try and get to them. Okay. Uh, Darth Breeboy replied back, totally agree with you on Scarlett Johansson, by the way. Thank you. Giovanni Alvarez, sorry for missing it the first time around. What classic movie do you think could be remade as a different genre movie aside from westerns to samurai flicks? Example, Braveheart redone as a fantasy. I think that there's a lot of movies that are sort of based in sort of historical times, sort of especially period dramas, where you could kind of reset them into, say, the future or something like that. Sherlock Holmes in the 23rd century or something like that, to give a really extreme example. But you know what I would love to see? I would love to see a romantic comedy where the tropes of it being kind of a bit stalkery are not really played for dark comedy, but just played as straight horror. And I'm going to assume that someone has tried to do that at some point, but it feels like something that someone should explore at some point or another. So I would say that that's my answer. Do a rom-com, but it's actually a horror movie. Okay, just going to check that I haven't missed anything. I don't think I'm missing anything. No, I think I just missed that one. Thankfully. Any underrated horror movies? I would. It's very hard to gauge which ones are underrated. Underrated. I feel like a lot of the kind of hyped ones get a sort of a lot of they get a lot of momentum behind them, so they're not really underhyped. Any underrated ones? I quite like The Wretched from earlier this year. That was kind of a bit of an indie breakout hit because it was one of the few films playing in drive-ins over the summer, and that was made for peanuts. I think it was less than $1 million, and it's not a great movie. I'm not going to overrate it or anything like that, but I thought it was really solid for a movie that was done on such a limited budget. It looks like a much more expensive movie. There are plot holes in that, especially regarding the plot point that the witch makes them forget the children that she's abducted. That seems to be really loosely applied over the course of that movie, but that's a fairly solid horror film. Not great, but decent, I would argue. So that was a nice little pleasant surprise as far as horror films go. I tend to not be a great judge of horror films because I didn't really grow up with horror as a genre. It's as a kid I was terrified of watching horror movies. I was a bit windy like that. So I kind of moved into horror late when I was in my teens, when I felt like I was old enough to kind of handle that. I'm not a big fan of kind of squishy horror movies and things like that. Oh, someone asked me earlier what was an opinion that goes against the popular consensus. I was not a big fan of Brandon Cronenberg's Possessor. Very recent example. That one seems to have been getting a lot of praise from the horror community, and I watched that and I just thought it was Brandon Cronenberg reheating a lot of the same themes that his father did, but mixing it with a lot of extremely explicit violence and sex that often felt quite gratuitous and not especially tied to the themes of that movie, because thematically that film was about technology dehumanizing us. But it feels like there's just explicit gore because that's what people expect from a Cronenberg movie. People say that it's, oh, Brandon Cronenberg is getting his own identity, but still recognizably a Cronenberg film. It feels like he's just doing the things that people expect from a Cronenberg movie in that one. I just felt it was really cold to the touch and not especially interesting. It takes an hour for it to actually get to the sort of the personality conflict at the heart of the film. I just couldn't warm to it. Not for me. Not for me. Is Death Sentence still on your to-do list? I actually like that one, and I'm a huge James Wan fan, but I'd still be down to see you review it, says Christopher Aries. You know what? That's one of the ones I'd probably have to rewatch. I remember at the time feeling like that was something I wanted to do. I feel like it tries to do a slightly different take on Death Wish, because obviously I think Death Sentence was written as a response to the Michael Winner version of Death Wish, where Michael Winner took Death Wish, which was not meant to be a sort of pro-vigilante book, and then made the film, which was kind of erring towards pro-vigilantism, and then the subsequent sequels, which are just like, hey, Charles Bronson blows people away. So Death Sentence was written by the original author to be a response to that, and sort of another sort of ordinary citizen, and he goes into vigilantism, and it doesn't really work out for him. I felt like the movie had problems with its credibility and things like that. I feel like a lot of vigilante movies, they don't feel very credible in the way that they have to sort of grossly exaggerate the legal system and have these really kind of outrageous systemic failures in order for these blatantly evil people to just walk free. I guess in the world of 2020, not that implausible, but you know what? I still think that movies... You know what would probably be more... You know what? Death Sentence probably wouldn't be one that I'd review nowadays unless I rewatched it and things were really jumping out at me. But when I make that statement, I'm kind of thinking of along the lines of Law Abiding Citizen, where that movie really kind of goes to ridiculous extremes and doesn't make any sense. Any movie you refuse to watch for ethical reasons? There's a lot of movies, actually. Some with animal cruelty that I refuse to watch. There are some movies that had some horrific behind-the-scenes things happen on them that I'll obviously never really watch. I feel like there are movies with certain people and certain filmmakers that I would, unless I was... For example, a Mel Gibson movie I probably wouldn't seek out nowadays, especially a new one. I would try to, if I had to watch something like that, I would try to maybe pick up in a charity shop or something like that, or watch it on television, or some other route where I don't feel like Mel Gibson's going to profit off of it, so I tend to just not really watch them. Woody Allen films, I think I've seen one Woody Allen film and it was Melinda and Melinda. Or, yeah, was that the title of it? It was not very good, and frankly, that's fine. I am fine with not watching Woody Allen. I am aware of his influence. I am fine with that. I know of his significance in film, but also, I don't want to watch them. Same with Polanski for the most part. I've seen maybe a handful of Polanski films, but otherwise, I've not actively sought them out. And you know what? That's fine. There are enough movies in the world that I think I can do that. Alien Boy 13. Give Welshie a Zoom chat. Well, if Welshie wants to call in, he is welcome to. Infamous Sex Lies of the Potato Man. No, that's not one I wouldn't watch, but I definitely wouldn't be able to monetize the video. Dark Jazz 10. Would you ever rewatch the old James Bond movies? I do rewatch the James Bond movies from time to time. Well, I haven't rewatched them properly from start to finish, but they're always on TV at some point or another, and I always catch up bits of them. it's I mean, I think I have seen all the Bond movies, but there's been ones I haven't seen in like literally 20 years. Octopussy is always one that springs to mind as one that I barely have any memory of, aside from the bit where Roger Moore runs around as a clown, because I saw that like 20 years ago when ITV was doing their Double O Heaven season. That, for certain people, that's just like a blast from the past there. But I do see the old Bond movies from time to time. The problem is with, if I'm trying to keep up with new stuff, I don't get a lot of time to watch old stuff, and that's ended up resulting in me getting lots and lots of movies over the years that I've never got around to actually watching because something else will take the immediate priority. Uh, W. Stein, 79. Big fan since 2012. Bad movie beat down my favourite. Would you ever review a bad wrestling movie with Cultaholic or What Culture? I don't know about What Culture. I don't know. Maybe if they offered the opportunity. I'm not. I tend to, going back to the whole collaborations thing. I tend to be very sort of picky about who I collaborate with. So I'd have to. I'm not very familiar with Cultaholic. So I'd have to sort of check in on that, really. As far as wrestling movies go, I wouldn't mind doing some more wrestling movies. I've got loads of them that I've not watched, and I think there might have been some in the review pile that I've not actually done either. So that's that's a thing. I think I say recently, it was probably earlier this year, but I saw the tail end of No Holds Barred on a watch party, and that's... I would love to talk about that. Hulk Hogan, and he's going up against Tiny Lister. Oh my god, my throat. Don't do that. Don't do that. You are not in any condition to be doing funny voices right now. So, is that the last question? I'm just gonna double check that I haven't missed any questions. Oh, hi Alison. Movie nights in the chat. So I've been so focused on trying to keep up with the Super Track questions that I hadn't noticed you in there. Hi. I should mention that I'm on this really kind of weird setup where my laptop, as you can probably notice, is down here. My camera is on the tripod. It's connected into the computer, and the USB microphone's here. So hopefully it's not too janky a setup. Oh, I know that Hulk Hogan has a lot of crap films I can cover because I recorded a whole run of Thunder in Paradise for Allison, so I know that actually Hulk Hogan has at least 24 episodes of crap. Question from Misty from the Patreon. I'm sure you've been asked this a million times, but what are some of your favourites and least favourite films and why? Favourites? I've probably mentioned some of my favourites before, like I've mentioned Die Hard and I mentioned Scrooged. Some of my other favourite films, The Prestige, regardless of how we feel about Christopher Nolan at the present moment, that movie is probably Nolan's best in my opinion. That movie absolutely blew me away the first time I saw that. It's a really skillfully written film. I also think that for a director that's often criticised for his lack of humanity, it may well be the movie with the most amount of empathy and emotion in it. And I think that even though it is kind of puzzle boxy in the same way that a lot of Nolan's films are, it does have some really great performances in it from Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale and Rebecca Hall, David Bowie as Tesla, and it's just, every time I watch that movie, I know something new about it. It's so ingeniously structured, so well written. Like, that, I think, is Nolan at the absolute peak of his powers, I would say. Planes, Trains and Automobiles, I've mentioned that before. It's one of those movies that I think I was a little bit lukewarm on it the first time I watched it, and then each time I watch it, it's kind of grown in my appreciation, and I need to rewatch it again because it's been too long. Uh, what are some other movies that really blew me away that I would call my favourites? I would say that Perks of Being a Wallflower, I think, as far as movies that's really kind of, I think, connected with me on an emotional level, and it felt like a movie where I was seen in that way. That movie, I think I related to that movie a lot, and feeling like you don't belong, and then having people kind of bring you out of your shell. I think that movie definitely is a lot of me. I do tend to gravitate towards movies about loners and things like that as my favourites. Stranger Than Fiction, the Will Ferrell movie, was a favourite of mine at one point. I haven't seen that in a very long time, but again, I kind of liked the sort of solitary leading character that kind of has this kind of very romantic awakening in certain ways. I found that to be quite poignant for me. I always consider myself to be quite a solitary, isolated chap, so those are the sort of characters that I gravitate towards. Up in the Air. Up in the Air is probably the apex of that. I love that movie. Again, sort of about George Clooney's character's emotional distance and disconnect, and how he's deliberately sort of isolated himself from the rest of the world, and I find that to be quite a poignant movie, and perhaps relate too much to Clooney's character sometimes. I would say that's definitely up there on my personal favourites. Lego Movie is probably a personal favourite of mine, partly for sentimental reasons. I grew up with Lego as a kid, so that's probably a good reason why that movie is a favourite of mine. Anchorman's probably a favourite. The original one, not the sequel, which I haven't seen since it was released and wasn't. It was fine. I'm just trying to think of what else is there that I used to go back to time and time again. I would say that a new favourite is Wolfwalkers. Easily my favourite film this year. I watched it. I can't stop thinking about it. I love that movie so much. I really do. It's so great. If you get a chance to see that movie, just see it. It's so fantastic. Those are definite favourites of mine. Sorry, whenever I think about Wolfwalkers, I kind of tear up a little bit. It had that kind of profound emotional effect on me. I cried 4 times during that movie, and I was so emotionally overwhelmed. Least favourites. There have been some movies that I really hated over the years. Some of the ones that I've reviewed on Bad Movie Beatdown, like Hangover Part 2, Good Luck Chuck, The Master of Disguise. The Master of Disguise was so bad that when I watched it, I genuinely had to stop the movie and have a little cry, actually, because it depressed me. It actually made me despair. I couldn't. I had to just stop and just sort of recalibrate, because it was really kind of affecting my mood how bad that film was. Love Guru is one of the worst films I have ever seen in terms of being a comedy. I remember the scene with the horses? The scene with the elephants on the ice rink. I remember being so mad at that I literally paused the movie and threw the remote on the ground. I was so furious. I was so angry. Like, that movie is an endurance test. I said that I don't really get that mad all that often, but that movie was... Oh, man. The Cavern. Just repellent. Like, awful filmmaking. Who goes down into a mine and goes, you know what, we should use natural light, and then what we'll do in post-production, because that was a stupid idea, you know what we should do? We should just, I don't know, pull up the contrast by a bajillion degrees, make it look really nasty and oversaturated, and then you do that ending. Go fuck yourself, movie. Okay, I got really mad at that, but I still get mad at that film. Uh, I hated The Condemned because the hypocrisy of its message really. Uh, the Haunting of Sharon Tate. I described that movie as you'd feel cleaner wading in raw sewage. I stand by that comment. That is just an exploitative bit of trash that I genuinely regret watching. I hated that movie. What a disgrace that film is. So yeah, I guess that thoroughly answers that question. Movies that I talk about absolutely adoringly, and movies that I have just absolute contempt for. uh, uh, Giovanni Alvarez, you've seen Strange Days. I have not. It's always been one that I've kind of wanted to see. It's been one that's actually been for a long time quite hard to see in the UK. It has a very checkered censorship history because of that crucial snuff film in the middle of it, which was re-edited by the censors. There's a video about it by GNC Films called Cutting Edge, which looks at the interaction between the filmmakers and the BBFC at the time, and the BBFC kind of took the line that that sequence was exploitive, and the filmmakers very much disagreed with that opinion, especially because the BBFC was comparing it to things like slasher movies, literally using the line, "See the pretty lady, cut her up," and the filmmakers were absolutely aghast at that. I believe their response letter was something along the lines of, we are proud of our artistic integrity in a industry which supports lowest common denominator trash like Dumb and Dumber," which is burn. Actually, speaking of Dumb and Dumber, you know what? That's probably one of my favourite movies as well. I have a lot of affinity for Dumb and Dumber in the theatrical version. Not the unrated cut, which has unfortunately superseded the actual theatrical version, but I think that Dumb and Dumber makes me laugh so hard. It's it's a gross out movie, but I have such fondness for it. The Mask as well. I have a lot of affinity for classic Jim Carrey movies. That's my childhood. If my slightly manic style is an indication that I grew up with that and kind of had Jim Carrey as an idol of mine, you are correct. That is me trying to do the I feel like that's something that very few people can pull off, and I'm probably not one of them. But Strange Days, it has been issued on Blu-ray, but it still has the old censorship cuts because the distributor was lazy. I think that nowadays the BBC would probably waive those, and I feel like that's a crucial sequence that needs to be seen intact, even though it's unpleasant, but it's pivotal to the movie. So I wouldn't mind seeing Strange Days. I know that it has quite a polarising reception. It didn't do very well at the box office when it came out, but it's definitely a movie that I would like to see, especially because James Cameron was involved in that film. It was his production company. He wrote the screenplay, I think. So Catherine Bigelow directed it. So yeah, I would love to see it, but I haven't. Alien Boy 13, would you make a video of your favourite films? I would love to see it. Thank you, stay cool. Thank you, Alien Boy. You've been very generous over the course of the night. I would say I wouldn't mind. I don't like doing list videos. I know YouTube loves that. You know, the top 5 blankety blanks, and I always feel like I'm in like that forces you to be definitive rather than subjective. That's why I tend to avoid ranking movies in end of year lists and just doing it alphabetically, because then you don't get people in the comments going, "Well, I think this is 2, and you gave it a 3," and you know. So I wouldn't mind doing that. I did have an idea at one point, and this is a really daft idea. I would love to sort of sit down with a psychiatrist and talk about my favourite movies, and then have the psychiatrist say what they thought that said about my personality. That feels a bit too psychoanalytical, maybe, but it was an idea. No, I didn't hear they rebanned Love Camp number 7. I'd have to see their justification for it. I do think they've been getting a little bit strict this year in a kind of weird way. They've kind of regressed back in certain elements, I think, the BBSC. Is there any more super chats? Have I missed anything? I have to remember that there is a significant delay in the chat. And I'm all out of Patreon questions. Hope you like the jumper, by the way. This was a birthday present. My birthday was last week. I don't really try to make it too big of a deal out of my birthday, even though I turned 30 this year, especially because it doesn't feel like it's a particularly special year, you know. I don't like to brag too much or anything, so I'm always worried about getting an ego about my work. I'm just a guy, you know. Sometimes I get accused of being a little bit pretentious, and I try not to be. I just try to be as grand as I can, you know. I'm just a guy. You don't have to agree with my opinions. You know, I just want to help people, and people will enjoy it, and that's all I ask. You know, that's all I ask. Oh, Alien Boy 13. Worst films get audience applause. Thank you again. Worst films get audience applause. You know what? I haven't been in many screenings where people applauded the audience, because that's not how it works in the UK, or at least not where I'm from. So I haven't been in many movies where people applauded at the end, and usually when they do, it's like one person and everyone looks at them weirdly, like, why are you clapping this? They're not gonna hear you. This is all pre-recorded. So, I guess, no, I can't think of any movies where they had sort of that kind of reaction. I did remember sitting in a screening of Dirty Grandpa where everyone was laughing their socks off, and I'm sat there watching this going, everyone in the room has lost their minds. Am I watching the same movie? Am I really this? Like, De Niro putting his dick in Zac Efron's face? Like, that's... Actually, I did laugh at that part. Maybe I shouldn't have, but definitely there... I was watching the rest of Dirty Grandpa going, what? Why are people... Stop laughing! Please stop laughing! Finding an uncool outfit in your closet is rare as hen's teeth. I don't know if that's true. Have you seen some of my older videos? Some of them are not, Alison. Some of the stuff that I've worn in older videos, I was not coordinating very well. That's definitely a skill I got better with over time. That is something that I actually do think about, is like, if I'm talking about this in the video, what do I wear? Because I feel like it's got to be fitting for what I'm discussing. I feel like that's something that no one actually appreciates outside myself, but it's still something that I do. I feel like, just like kind of a subtle nod. It kind of makes the experience feel a little bit more complete and considered. Now that's me being slightly pretentious. Harry Baker, favourite song from Rocket Man? I would say that the Rocket Man sequence is very good. I'm Still Standing at the very end. That performance. Yeah. I will say that that's the best song in Rocket Man, especially the way that they splice him into the actual video, and you've got Bruno Tonioli there in the kind of very, very, very small, leaves very little to the imagination there, Bruno. Ooh. Yeah, so... I would say that Saturday Nights as well. So, that's really well staged. The way that they do the transition of him aging up during that song, and the way that he runs through the fairground, that's brilliantly staged. All the musical numbers in Rocket Man are so fantastic, and I feel like that movie was overshadowed by Bohemian Rhapsody, which is an injustice. Like, what happened there? Like, Rocket Man gets Elton John in a way that Bohemian Rhapsody did not for Queen, and especially Freddie Mercury. Alien Boy 13, worst for me was Transformers 3. I booed it. I have not seen any of the Transformers films since the second one. Partly because the second one was 2.5 hours long, and then the other ones kept getting longer, and then, of course, there's the fact that when I reviewed the second one, I was having an absolutely terrible day, and then I gave it a complete pass because I was not really critically focused on the movie, and then I got a huge backlash, and that kind of put me off actually reviewing Transformers movies from that point forward. Hence why I did the video talking about it and then talking about, no, these are all the stuff that I missed the first time around. And I think I've seen Transformers 3, but I've not seen Transformers 4 and 5. I think 3 was on the review pile at one point. I remember I had a hell of a time getting Transformers 2 back on YouTube, but maybe I will do something like that at some point. Missy Diabolical, do you have time between movies to watch TV and stream series shows? If so, what are some of your favourites? You know what? It's really tough. There is a part of me that is like, well, see, back in the day, I used to watch Heroes. Heroes, I watched to the bitter end. I didn't go into Heroes Reborn, but I watched Heroes throughout all the fluctuations, and that experience has scarred me for life because I feel like the TV shows that I get into had to be a limited run where, they have a set sort of defined arc. Like, okay, we're running for X amount of time. It's maybe a handful of episodes. Not like, the sort of Lost or Heroes kind of thing where it runs for like a bajillion seasons. They don't know what they're doing and it just gradually goes completely off the rails. And also, American TV series are so long. It feels like you have to invest interest in them. So, I feel like the ones that I do get to see are very sort of brief, limited run series. That maybe 6 episodes or something like that. Sometimes I try to keep up with them. Sometimes I don't. It depends on. Like, I really want to see The Queen's Gambit. It seems like everyone and their mother has seen The Queen's Gambit. And Anya Taylor-Joy is a joy, I guess? That's a way of describing her. But she's apparently fantastic in that show, which of course makes sense because she's fantastic in virtually everything that I've seen her in. So I would love to catch up on that show at some point. I want to catch up on The Undoing, actually, as well. But I know, but again, it's about finding time. It always feels like I'm sort of, I need to do this, and I need to do that, and I need to do this, and it might not necessarily be what I want to do, but I feel like I should do it, and so that always ends up being sort of. So what am I watching? I'm a little bit behind on His Dark Materials, but I'm watching that. I'm still a bit mixed on it, but I'm kind of keeping up with it because it's airing. I guess if you count Small Axe, I'm behind on that, but I need to catch up because the first. Well, I really liked Mangrove. Lovers Rock, not so much. Even though I got so much backlash for Lovers Rock. The comments on that review, there's lots of people from the community at that time saying how it isn't very accurate. And I feel like I was one of the more mild opinions on that movie, going, well, yeah, it feels authentic, but it's not for me because it's a party movie and I'm not a party person and there's not really much for a plot there. But then I got people in the comments going, this idiot doesn't know anything about what they're talking about, and it made it sound like I gave it a praise, when it was just sort of like a measured, it's okay. But yeah, that was a bit of a rough couple of days. I don't think that helped a lot. I think that might have started me off a little bit. What other TV series? I used to watch Charlie Brooker's stuff quite fanatically, but I'm well behind on that. I feel like the Netflix stuff tends to slip through my fingers because that's not very easily accessible. What made you get Netflix? Family had it. That's what happened. So I have I'm on someone else's account, and that's how I occasionally watch Netflix. So how long have I been going on for? I have apparently been going on for, I guess, an hour or so. Yeah, about over near an hour and a half. Oh, Laura Hertzman, how do you feel about Legendary serving WB with legal papers about not mentioning their deal with HBO Max? I know that some people have made videos about the sort of situation there, and I tend to be of the mindset of the first reaction isn't always the best one, and you should wait and see how things kind of shake out. And I think that the sort of Legendary stuff and all the stuff that's come out since then, where actors and directors are sort of turning on them, I feel like a lot of people just sort of jumped on the news on Friday and then didn't wait for Monday when everyone else would respond to it. And so I will probably talk about that in my end of year video, because that's probably where that's heading. It's going to be me talking about COVID and cinemas, and I think it might get ugly. I can see this getting very ugly very quick, because WB's kind of forcing this kind of huge systemic change, and no one's really wanting or ready for that. I think most people were kind of the mindset of, yeah, COVID's here now, but cinemas will be back at some point. We just got to hold out for that, and then so I don't know. There are no certainties at this point in time. Okay, any more questions? I don't see any more super chats, so I have been going for quite a while. I might give it like 5 more minutes, and then I think I'm gonna wrap up. You know what, the plan was originally going to be about an hour or so. I felt like I was kind of taking up too much time, but it's just sort of naturally ballooned out because I am not a succinct person half the time. Sometimes I can be succinct, and then other times I just waffle on for ages. Aimboy13, do you listen to music, hip hop, jazz, rock? No, actually, I don't listen to a lot of music, and I feel like I'm a bit of a philistine because of it. Just I don't gravitate towards it. I do like certain music, but I don't really listen to it recreationally. I know a lot of people just sort of go through their lives and they just put the earphones in and just kind of blank out life and just listen to music constantly. I don't understand how people can do that. I feel like a lot of people are really into music and they'll talk about their music really extensively, but then they'll have a sort of knowledge about film, and they watch a couple of films and that's about it. And I feel like that's the reverse in my situation, where I see a lot of films. Yeah, I don't know a lot of music, to be honest. It's just not really my thing. Sometimes I will listen to a track because it was used in a movie trailer. I feel like I'm very visually orientated like that way. If I kind of get like a visual rhythm to the music, that might get me into a track. I feel like a lot of music just isn't the kind of sound that I like. I feel like a lot of current music is a bit dirgy and over processed and not really all that great. I kind of like quite kind of poppy kind of stuff, but very sort of traditionally poppy. Like I quite like Carly Rae Jepsen, actually. I think that she puts out quite good songs. Very sort of very classically poppy, but very kind of upbeat and positive and kind of bubbly. I like that. That's I quite like those songs. I think I might have surprised a few people there, but I wouldn't say that I actively, follow her or anything like that. It's just that I've kind of liked a few of her songs, and then if I hear them over and over again, I go, actually, I don't mind listening to this song over and over again, whereas a lot of modern pop, I go, I've heard that like a million times. You know. What other Alan H. In your earlier videos, I picked up a very strong TV burp vibe. Some of the jokes were very Harry Hill. Did it have an influence on your videos? Yes, it did. I was a big fan of TV burp back in the day. That is definitely one of my main influences. I would argue that the main influences for Bad Movie Beatdown were Charlie Brooker, Screen Wipe, and TV burp, and trying to amalgamize that into something. I think there are literal jokes that I pinched from a couple of them. You know, good art. You know, great artist steal, as I guess the phrase goes. But there were a couple of little jokes that I kind of put in as little nods. There's a couple of episodes where I turn to a sideways camera. That's a TV burp thing where Harry Hill would kind of break the fourth wall almost by turning directly into a camera on the side there. TV burp had a very kind of absurdist kind of thinking to it. And so you can definitely see that in a lot of the earlier videos where it kind of leans into kind of more sketchy kind of stuff. And that was very much me trying to differentiate myself from a lot of the reviewers at the time. And that was less of a thing later on. Obviously, it kind of got a bit more serious and a bit more kind of focused on the movie directly. But yeah, I did want to kind of have this kind of mix of serious but silly, you know. And yeah, that's good. That I'm glad that people have picked up on that. I do worry about people not picking up on my inspirations so much. Uh, Giovanni Alvarez, favorite film soundtracks. I actually really like the soundtrack to Alien 3, and I guess Batman Forever as well. Both Elliot Goldenthal scores really dramatic and bombastic sounding, very operatic in certain ways. I love cues in the Alien 3 soundtrack. I think that it's a really kind of terrific soundtrack that elevates that movie, especially in the longer cut, which is a lot clearer about what it wants to be. And so I think that kind of soundtrack has a real emotional punch to it, and it's memorable. It's distinctive in a way that I think that a lot of soundtracks are kind of wallpapery. If a movie has a soundtrack that makes it stand out, that means that I've actually noticed it when I was watching it. Sometimes you just kind of tune it out sometimes, and that's not really what you want in a score. Um, I really like the soundtrack to It Follows. I thought that had a very kind of distinctive sound to it that heightens the horror a lot. Uh, and yeah, I think that would be a. Apparently, I've missed another one, so I need to track that. Mr. Together's account. Okay, what do you think are the future of theatres post COVID? I wish I knew the answer to that. I genuinely do. I think that they will bounce back to a certain extent because people want to be in cinemas. I think that people go as a social thing. They want to be with their friends and share a room with people. But of course, obviously, in a pandemic, that's not the best thing to do because obviously you're not supposed to be hanging out with other people. They might not be at the same level as they were. I think there have been some seismic shifts over the course of the last year, but there's no real certainty about any of those issues. I just want them to be around because honestly, they're one of the few social spaces that I feel like I have. I don't. Cinemas are one of the few places that I go to socially, and because there's a lot of places where I don't feel like I vibe with the environment. Like people go to pubs and things and bars, and that's not really my scene. The music is always pumped up so loud you can barely even hear yourself think. I don't like drinking very much, and I don't kind of get engaged in that sort of drinking culture, so that's kind of out. That makes it sound like I'm really antisocial. I probably am. But yeah, I feel like you need those sort of physical, tangible spaces. And I still have a sort of real affinity for things like video stores, for example. I know they're technically obsolete. I know that digital is so much better as a rental platform, but I like the idea of movies being physical, tangible objects, and you walk in there and you might stumble upon something that you would never see on something like Netflix or something like that, where you just got a sea of just random algorithm curated stuff and it's it's easy for things to just get completely lost, whereas in a video store I feel like you can stumble upon it, and it's like libraries have a purpose for books. It's about having that place for a local community, and that's why it's so terrible that things like libraries shut because of a lack of funding. I would say the same is true of something like video stores. I do think that you need those actual physical spaces, and the fact that in the last 20 years we've kind of pushed them out is a tragedy, because I think that it's making us a very kind of hermitized people, where people can be ignored and overlooked because being, even as someone who is online, I would say that there's a difference between being in an online space and being in a physical one, and it determines how your interactions. And I feel like you need actual physical spaces for people to represent themselves, because otherwise that's no representation at all. So that's kind of my stumbling way of phrasing it, but that's the way I feel. I feel like cinemas play an important role in communities, like any public space does, honestly. Yeah. So I think on that note, I'm gonna wrap things up unless there's any more questions. So thank you all for coming out. It's been a real pleasure. I hope I have answered a couple of questions. Maybe you've got a better understanding of who I am as a person. I do feel like I've maybe overshared somewhat sometimes, but yeah. Hopefully you've enjoyed the stream, and I'm gonna try and get some more videos out when I can. You know what? It's been nice to see all of you come out, because I did get a little bit worried. I've been kind of in a bit of a negative headspace, as I said before, and just I feel like the year has kind of made me feel quite alone in certain respects, because obviously we've all been kind of separated. So I want to wish all of you well. I hope you're doing well. I wish all of you a safe and happy festive season, and just go out and, well, don't literally go out, but figuratively, just go out and be nice to one another, and be friendly, and be wonderful, and do creative things, take chances, and be better at me than doing that, because I feel like I don't do enough of that. So, yeah, thank you. Oh, one last question. Alien Boy sneaks it in there. Just okay. Hope you do another Q&A. Love you, man. Stay cool. Love you all too. Thank you all for coming. It really is appreciated. Sometimes I don't feel like I appreciate it enough. So thank you. If you want to support my work, there are various outlets. There is my Patreon if you want to make a longer term commitment. I also have a Ko-fi page now, because why not diversify my income streams? But I think for now... Oh, again, another one sneaks in. Omar's SBP03. What's your favourite Bad Movie Beatdown video you've done? What's my favourite? A Good Day to Die Hard's probably up there as being one of my favourites. Shadow Man and the Seagal episode's probably my favourite. I think it's the most consistently funny one. What are the ones I would consider to be my favourites? I would say the Metal Man review has a fondness. The Spirit definitely is one that I'm quite fond of. Yeah, I would say those. I think On Deadly Ground, as far as the very early ones, I think it's the first time where I think I really got my voice down in a video. That I don't think that's a perfect video by any stretch of the imagination. There's a lot of sort of baggy areas in that review, and as people have been very quick to point out, several times over the last few days, so I guess YouTube is recommending it. It's not a jet ski, it's a snowmobile. Okay. Alright. Whoa, 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 whoa. Okay. I just want to check that I haven't missed any questions. Oh, Dark Jazz 10. Stay strong and stay safe. You're very much loved. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, the Northern Irish Explorer. You mentioned Christopher Nolan. What soured your opinion of him recently? Combined with how some of his recent films have gone, the Tenet thing definitely soured me. Putting a movie out in the midst of a pandemic, not great form. Really not great form. You know what? I like Christopher Nolan's films up to a certain point. I think what soured me on Christopher Nolan initially, because I used to be a big Nolan fan. Like there was like a whole stretch of movies that I really really enjoyed, and then that kind of stopped. But I think that not helping that was the sort of the fan base that had gone around Christopher Nolan, where he could do no wrong, which I don't think has really helped his ego very much, and certainly the way that people sort of were almost fanatical about Christopher Nolan. I feel like that's died down a little bit in recent years, but there was a time when every Christopher Nolan movie was sort of being praised as as like the greatest thing since sliced bread, and that feels hyperbolic to an absurd extreme. Like, they're really good movies, but they're not the greatest movies ever made, or at least not some of them. I feel like The Dark Knight Rises really let me down. I not a fan of that. Interstellar was not particularly great. I thought that Dunkirk was a more return to form, and I've not seen Tenet yet. I will catch up on that in due course. But I think that Nolan had a really great stretch of movies. I think that Memento to Inception, it's a good run. That's a good run. But definitely, I think that the critique that maybe his films are lacking emotion or maybe overly fixated on their technical aspects, justifiable criticism, I would say. Anyway, I think I've answered all the questions. I'm just gonna quickly double check, absolutely make sure that I've answered everyone. Oh, Big Jack Films, thank you for that. I missed that one. Thank you. Um, oh, Dark Jazz 10. Which of your favorite superheroes do you think have suffered the most injustice in movies? I would say I don't know if I actually have that much love for them as a gang, but I feel like the Fantastic Four need to have a movie that actually does them justice as comic book characters, because that feels like an injustice. Yeah, so even though I don't really have that much love for them, Fantastic Four probably needs an actual good movie. Not counting The Incredibles, which is basically the Fantastic Four, but not actually a Fantastic Four movie. Uh, I think I have covered most things. Okay, all right. I think I have answered most of the questions. Thank you all for coming. It really is appreciated, and take care. Ciao.